They say Nicole Kidman is untouchable, the ice queen of Hollywood. Behind the porcelain skin and sculpted cheekbones, fans have always seen beauty distilled to perfection. But today, the world shifts under her feet. Today, Nicole Kidman, the actress who has built a career on transcendence, is saying goodbye after receiving a diagnosis that no one expected. Suddenly that distant glamour feels achingly close, a reminder that life's most glittering stars cast shadows of their own. It began with a private visit to a specialist, a hushed phone call in a dimly lit room, and then a name: Stage 3 ovarian cancer. The words landed like a frozen wave upon her heart. For decades, Nicole has drawn on tragedy as fuel for her art, channeling pain into roles that wound us even as they heal us. Yet this time, the struggle isn't for a character. This time, the struggle is hers. Imagine the paradox. A woman whose career has been an act of resurrection, now confronting mortality, not as fiction, but as fact. She who has immersed herself in the suffering of characters, from the tormented writer Virginia Woolf to the desperate courtesan Satine, must face the most brutal script of all, her own. And in that space between disbelief and acceptance, we see her not as a distant idol, but as a friend in crisis, holding on to hope and preparing to let go. Nicole's public image has always been carefully curated: ethereal gowns, emerald eyes bright beneath the flashes of paparazzi bulbs, a poised smile that never cracks. We've applauded her grace, her elegance, her unwavering composure. But grace rarely arrives without struggle, and elegance is often the final act of someone who has endured the hard edges of life's tempest. In a moment of extraordinary vulnerability, she shared a video message from her hospital bed. With her hair tied back and a soft scarf around her neck, she spoke directly to the camera. "I've spent a lifetime telling other people's stories. Now I face my own chapter, raw and unedited. I ask for your strength, your love, and your prayers as I walk this road." Her voice cracked just once, the veil lifted, and her millions of followers watched a hero's armor shatter. But who is the woman behind the legend? Born in Honolulu in 1967, Nicole Mary Kidman came into a world that mirrored her future duality, lush and serene on the surface, unpredictable and vast just below. Her father, a renowned psychologist, and her mother, a dedicated nurse, moved the family back and forth between continents, each new city teaching her adaptability, and each departure imprinting a sense of longing. As a little girl in Sydney, she struggled with a stutter so jarring that words sometimes fled her altogether. Classmates teased her, calling her names that stuck like burrs. That broken voice became her secret shame, until she discovered a refuge in a local ballet studio. In those silent halls, her body spoke in fluid arabesques, each turn and leap transforming insecurity into artistry. "I found my voice when I stopped trying to speak," she later said, and in that discovery, the seeds of her destiny were planted. At 14, she landed a small part in an Australian holiday film called Bush Christmas. It wasn't much, just a few lines and a timid smile, but for Nicole, it felt like the first tremor of a seismic shift. Under the camera's gaze, she felt more herself than she ever did in a crowded playground. She felt powerful, seen, and for a fleeting moment, unbroken. She left traditional schooling and immersed herself in the National Theatre of Australia, devoting long nights to mastering the Stanislavski method and Shakespearean verse. Her teachers called her the Moon Girl, distant yet luminescent, and whispered that she possessed a rare ability to hold silence like a symphony. Every role she tackled became another layer shed of her shell, another opportunity to transmute pain into performance. Her breakout came in 1989 with Dead Calm, a thriller set on a deserted yacht in the vast Pacific. As Ray Ingram, Nicole played a woman battling both a psychopath and the ocean's turbulence. She didn't need to scream. She held her ground, her eyes wide with controlled panic, her composure fraying at the edges. Audiences felt that every ripple on the water was an echo of her own unspoken fear. Critics marveled at her stillness, calling it an acting masterclass in tension and restraint. That film didn't just announce her to Hollywood. It heralded the arrival of an actress unafraid to wade into darkness and emerge luminous. Overnight she became a sought-after talent, the girl with red hair who could make silence speak volumes. And while that success promised glittering premieres and magazine covers, it also marked the start of a life steered by scripts not of her choosing. Now, more than 3 decades later, that same woman stands at the brink of the unknown. The spotlight that once offered escape now illuminates her most fragile self. Yet if there is one thread woven through her journey, it is resilience. From stutter to stardom, from the silent pain of childhood to the triumphant roar of an Academy Award, she has built a legacy defined not by how she shone, but by how she survived. The question we all grapple with is this: Can the artist who has resurrected herself time and again rise above the greatest challenge of all? As Nicole prepares to begin treatment, her message to fans remains simple and fierce. I have faced storms in front of cameras for years. Today I ask you to stand with me as I face my storm off-screen. Let us find light together. The world watched in stunned silence as Nicole left her home that morning. No red carpet, no crowds, just a single black SUV waiting at the curb. She climbed in, her posture poised but her eyes betraying the weight she carried. Inside that vehicle, she wasn't a Hollywood icon. She was a woman grappling with the gravest curveball life can throw. Hours later, in a sunlit consultation room, the verdict was echoed in measured tones. We need to operate as soon as possible. There was no melodrama, no blink and you'll miss it moment, just the cold precision of medical reality. In the days that followed, news outlets scrambled for details. Fans flooded social media with prayers and pink ribbon emojis. A hashtag trended in honor of Nicole's fight, but none of it felt quite enough. Because behind the global outpouring was a quiet determination, hers. She had walked onto Oscar stages clutching statuettes, delivered speech after speech about pain and healing. Now she would face the most critical performance of her life, one that didn't come with scripts or retakes. At home, Keith Urban paced the hardwood floors of their Nashville farmhouse, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in hushed tones with Nicole's surgeon, absorbing every word, willing his voice to remain steady for their daughter's sake. Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, ages 12 and 9, those two girls, with eyes so like their mothers, were learning what strength looks like in small acts. A whispered prayer at bedtime, a hand held in the hallway, a drawing left on the fridge that read, "Mommy, you're brave." Nicole saw them and felt a surge of courage that no award could equal. Before the world read the headlines, Nicole called her closest friends. She spoke in fragments at first, voice hoarse from tears she refused to shed in front of strangers. "It's serious," she said, "but I'm going to fight." She paused, inhaled. "I need you to remind me every morning why I can't give up." Those friends, fellow actors, old classmates, the nurse next door, created a quiet network of support. They shared memory-laden anecdotes from her youth. The time she tripped on stage at the National Theater and turned her stumble into a dance. The night she stayed up writing letters to her mother on the night she was diagnosed with cancer years ago. The first time she read for dead calm and felt fear transform into power. Their reminders forged the first rails on a track she would ride through surgery and recovery. Meanwhile, the production of her upcoming limited series ground to a halt. The director released a statement expressing unwavering faith in her return, while co-stars posted photos from the set with messages of solidarity. Yet even as industry gears turned to accommodate her absence, Nicole worried about her legacy. Would she be remembered for this chapter? Or would any performance she had ever given be overshadowed by that moment between life and death? She steeled herself, recalling the line she once delivered as Virginia Woolf. "Sometimes the wounds in life make us feel as if we might die, but it is those very wounds that help us reach the truest parts of ourselves." In her hospital room, morning light cut across white sheets like a promise. A nurse handed her a basket of letters and fan art. One drawing showed her crowned in flames, standing at the edge of a cliff. Another letter came from a woman in Australia who shared Nicole's childhood stutter and credited the actress's resilience for her own courage to speak up. As Nicole read these messages, tears finally came, warm and unguarded. But instead of breaking her, they reminded her of the invisible threads connecting her to countless strangers whose lives she had touched. On the eve of her surgery, she requested a quiet family dinner. Keith cooked their favorite meal, pan-seared salmon, brown rice and steamed greens, served with candles despite it being midday. Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret passed her a hand-sewn placemat, pink and gold embellished with their tiny fingerprints. They giggled through dinner, trying to lighten the mood, telling jokes that made Nicole's mouth curve into a genuine smile for the first time in days. When she tucked them into bed later, she pressed kisses onto their foreheads and whispered, "I'm doing this for you. I'll be back." That night, long after the household was silent, Nicole sat at the edge of her bed and closed her eyes. She pictured the past, her first step onto a stage in Sydney, that moment in dead calm, clutching her Oscar for the hours. And she pictured the future, uncharted and uncertain, yet waiting for her presence, her artistry, her strength. She inhaled deeply, feeling a familiar calm wash over her. This was the crucible she had always been drawn to, the searing heat of transformation. When dawn arrived, she rose with the knowledge that every role she had ever played had prepared her for this one, the role of herself, raw and unedited, embracing fragility and fortifying it with courage. As she was wheeled down the corridor, camera flashes and whispers evaporated, leaving only the sterile crispness of hospital air. And in that moment, she carried with her the hope of millions and a vow to emerge, once again a living testament to resilience. When morning light filtered through the slatted blinds, Nicole lay in her private recovery suite, eyes closed, as the steady hum of medical machines whispered alongside her labored breaths. The surgery had lasted 5 hours. Her body bore the story of that struggle in a thin bandage across her abdomen. Yet in her chest, beneath the ache and the slow rise and fall of each breath, she felt the firm pulse of determination. Nurses moved quietly, checking IV drips and charting vital signs. But it was the soft chime of her phone, hundreds of texts from friends, family, fans that reminded her she wasn't alone. Each message, from "You've got this" to "We love you," stitched together a tapestry of hope stronger than any fear. By the third day, nausea swept in with the first round of chemotherapy. The scent of antiseptic mingled with the bitterness of antiemetic medicine, and Nicole's once lustrous hair began to fall in silent clouds around her shoulders. She asked for scissors and sat by the window, cutting strands that had been her signature as though releasing memories she no longer needed. When the last lock slipped free, she held the bald reflection in her mirror and tilted her chin upward. "This," she whispered to her image, "is me at my rawest." In that moment, she reclaimed power from vulnerability, transforming what the world might view as defeat into a new badge of courage. As the weeks unfolded, she found herself drifting back through the corridors of her past roles. She pictured Virginia Woolf stepping into the river's cold embrace, Satine singing "Come What May" by candlelight, Celeste Wright clutching her torn dignity. Each of those characters had depended on her to translate raw emotion into unforgettable art. Now Nicole drew from their strength to fuel her own recovery. She would repeat lines from Moulin Rouge in her mind as affirmations, Satine's heartbreak becoming a prayer for her healing. In the silent moments between chemotherapy sessions, the echoes of applause and camera shutters felt like distant echoes, replaced now by the steady beat of her own heart forging onward. Outside her suite, the world reeled with admiration and concern. Social media was alight with Nicole's strong banners, fan art of her standing tall against a backdrop of stars, and trending videos chronicling her career highlights. One tribute montage superimposed her face over images of phoenixes rising. Another stitched together clips of her greatest emotional breakthroughs on screen. Celebrity peers recorded video messages, Meryl Streep sending love, Kate Blanchett offering words of solace, and local Australian news anchors recalling how a young Nicole Kidman had once lit up a school play. In each clip, her smile returned, a flicker of that old grace shining through the shadows. By her 4th week, the clinic corridors had become familiar terrain, doctors nodding with respect, nurses offering knowing smiles. She began reading letters from women who saw themselves in her journey. A teacher in Texas who survived breast cancer, a mother in Mumbai who lost her hair to chemotherapy, a teenager in London who found strength to speak despite a lifetime of stutters. Their voices sounded in her mind during restless nights, guiding her toward a purpose larger than any role, to be a living testament that pain, when faced head-on, can illuminate the path for others. When Nicole finally walked out of that hospital, hair gone but spirit intact, she paused in the sunlight and closed her eyes. The wind carried the scent of jasmine from a nearby garden, and she could almost hear the distant hum of a film set calling her name. She rose to her full height, braided a simple scarf around her head, and faced the small crowd of waiting reporters and cameras. In a soft, measured voice she said, "This chapter has tested me in ways I never imagined, but I carry with me the stories of every single woman who has faced her own darkness and chosen to rise. I feel your strength in my veins." When the first call from her agent came, 2 weeks after she left the hospital, Nicole felt a flutter she hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. The offer was for a cameo in a passion project directed by a longtime friend, a script about a former child star who retreats from the spotlight after a public meltdown, then returns to find purpose in giving voice to survivors of trauma. It mirrored her own story so closely it made her stomach clamp. But she knew she had to do it. Stepping back on set would be more than a career move. It would be a declaration that she refused to be defined by illness. She took a breath and said yes. From the moment she arrived on that soundstage, lights burning like 1,000 suns, she felt the familiar thrill of creation, but with a new perspective. Every clapperboard snap, every whispered direction became proof that she still belonged here, that her art had purpose beyond entertainment. Co-stars greeted her with hugs that brushed against her bandages, reminding her that vulnerability is the opposite of weakness. In one tearful scene, she channeled the raw emotions she had lived through. The fear in the doctor's office, the emptiness in the chemotherapy chair, the fierce love that had carried her through. When the director called cut, Everyone held their breath until he said, "That's the moment," a moment they would all carry with them. The project, titled Phoenix Rising, quickly became an intimate labor of love. Nicole collaborated on rewrites, embedding her own words into the character's monologue about surviving the unspeakable and using that pain to illuminate others' darkness. She insisted that a real cancer survivor be cast as the lead, to blur the lines between fiction and reality and honor the authenticity of the experience. Producer credits now included a dedication, "For all who fight in private, may your stories inspire us in public." It was simple, yet powerful, a testament to how Nicole's journey had transformed her, not only as an actress, but as a storyteller and advocate. During one late-night shoot, she found herself alone on a set built to look like a hospital ward. The fluorescent lights overhead cast an eerie glow, and the static scent of plastic hip panels mingled with distant echoes from the grip truck. She walked among the empty beds, each one a symbol of battle and resilience, recalling the nights she lay awake, hooked up to machines, heartbeat booming in her ears like a rallying drum. She closed her eyes, placed a hand on the metal rail of a hospital bed, and whispered, "This was where I first found strength." In that quiet homage, she felt a profound alignment between her past and present selves. Back home in Nashville, Keith had started a meaningful ritual. Every morning, he placed a freshly cut wildflower on Nicole's bedside table beside her tea, an unspoken reminder that beauty still blooms even in harsh soils. He whispered songs of hope as he walked their daughters to school, leaving small audio notes on her phone for her to listen to when fatigue hit hardest. It was in those acts of steadiness, far from cameras and applause, that she found the healing balm her soul craved. And while her public persona was one of indomitable poise, she let her private life become a sanctuary of healing and renewal. Fans watched her resurgence closely. Paparazzi photos caught her laughing as she read scripts in a sunlit trailer, her head wrapped in colorful scarves. Social media outlets buzzed with speculation and praise. "She's back," read the headlines. Yet it wasn't merely a comeback story, it was an evolution. Interviews shifted from red carpet chatter about fashion to heartfelt conversations about survivorship and advocacy. She used her platform to shine a light on early detection and improved care, partnering with organizations to fund life-saving research and ensure no woman faced her diagnosis in isolation. Midway through filming, Phoenix Rising premiered a private screening for survivors, caregivers, and medical professionals. The theater was hushed as Nicole's character stood center stage under a single spotlight and delivered her defeat-turned-triumph speech. The audience wept openly, clutching hands, nodding in fierce recognition. After the lights came up, a courageous young woman approached Nicole and said, "Because of you, I scheduled my checkup. I caught it in stage 1. In that moment, Nicole felt more victorious than any award had ever allowed her to be. She stepped forward, embraced the woman, and whispered, "We rise together." By the time the film was released worldwide, Nicole had redefined her career. No longer just a Hollywood luminary, she had become a champion for resilience. The project topped streaming charts, but more importantly, it sparked a wave of fundraising and dialogue that gave real hope to countless individuals. Interviews with news outlets featured tearful reunions with survivors who credited her for sharing their pain and validating their experiences. Hospitals reported spikes in appointments as women felt emboldened to seek help sooner. And yet, through all the accolades and philanthropic milestones, Nicole remained grounded. She returned each evening to her farmhouse, where the hush of the countryside offered reprieve. There, under a sky unfettered by city lights, she found her true north. In calls with her daughters, she spoke candidly about fear and strength, teaching them that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the resolve to face it. Through Phoenix Rising, she had told her own most crucial story. Now she lived it. As the weeks turned into months, Nicole's life settled into a rhythm that balanced ambition with healing. Early mornings found her in conference rooms at research foundations, lending her voice to fundraising galas and awareness campaigns. Her speeches were not polished lectures, but heartfelt conversations, stirring emotions with anecdotes about her own late-night fears in sterile wards. Yet she never allowed the public tragedy to overshadow her artistry. She reminded audiences that creativity and advocacy can coexist. In meetings with scientists, she translated medical jargon into human stories, bridging the gap between laboratories and living rooms. This dual role in the limelight and behind the scenes became her new signature. One highlight was the annual Light Within Summit, where survivors and experts gathered under one roof to celebrate progress in women's health. Nicole opened the event with a moment of silence for those who had lost their battles, then smiled through tears as survivors shared testimonies. Cameras captured her steady gaze, a silent promise etched in her expression, "I stand with you." When the evening gala commenced, she performed a song from Moulin Rouge, her voice trembling at first before rising with confidence. The room erupted not because she was an Oscar winner, but because she had painted her vulnerability onto a stage and turned it into collective solidarity. Between advocacy events, she found solace in quiet afternoons at her Nashville home, sorting through scripts for her next artistic venture. The offers were diverse: suspense thrillers, biographical dramas, even a voice role in an animated feature. But Nicole, guided by newfound clarity, chose projects that resonated with her journey. One script described a woman who rebuilds her life after devastating loss by opening a community art center. In a conference table reading, she felt a familiar tug in her chest, the restless urge to tell stories of redemption. She signed on, determined to infuse the character with shades of her own resilience and compassion. As production commenced on that film, Nicole's energy on set was subtly transformed. There was no trace of fear in her steady movements, only a grave sense of purpose. Her co-star, a rising actor battling homelessness issues, later recalled that her simple acknowledgement of his struggles made him feel seen. She listened intently to their stories during breaks, scribbling notes that she shared with the director to enhance the narrative's authenticity. That commitment to elevating the voices of the marginalized became a hallmark of her post-diagnosis career, a reminder that the most potent art often comes from shared pain. Simultaneously, the world witnessed a softer side of Nicole as she hosted an online mentorship program for aspiring actors. Each week, she joined live streams to discuss technique, perseverance, and self-care in a notoriously harsh industry. She spoke candidly about her surgery scars and chemo fatigue, normalizing the idea that setbacks can fortify rather than diminish one's art. Hundreds of subscribers sent heartfelt messages about how her transparency saved their dreams. When one young performer sent a clip of herself auditioning with fresh hair regrowth, Nicole responded with personalized feedback and a video message of encouragement that went viral across social media. In Hollywood circles, her transformation did not go unnoticed. Directors started sending scripts tailored to her evolving ethos, stories of flawed protagonists who triumph not through grand gestures but through quiet perseverance. At a producer's roundtable, Nicole advocated for more female-led narratives and diverse casting, leveraging her status to open doors for underrepresented creators. She described her own experience surviving cancer as the ultimate script rewrite, one that taught her the value of collaboration over competition. Her speeches at industry panels shifted from personal anecdotes to policy proposals, calling for more support systems for artists facing health crises. The philanthropic landscape also echoed her influence. The organization she co-founded, Resilient Women's Fund, surpassed its initial fundraising goals within the year, channeling millions into screening programs for underserved communities. Nicole personally visited rural clinics in sub-Saharan Africa, marshalling local healthcare workers and global donors in a rare display of grassroots diplomacy. She believed that visibility could foster accountability, so every visit was documented in mini-documentaries she narrated herself. When one short film won a humanitarian award, she accepted it on behalf of all the silent fighters who heal in shadows, reminding viewers that true victory lies in life's small daily triumphs. Back home at dusk, Nicole sat on the porch sipping chamomile tea, listening to Keith's guitar drifting through open windows. Her daughters danced on the lawn as fireflies swirled, a quiet celebration of life's simple gifts. In those moments she understood that her truest work lay beyond film sets, in lifting others. She had become more than an actress, she was a light carrier. Every choice, every word now served a larger purpose, to guide people from darkness toward hope. Her journey showed that courage can blossom from cracks in life,